One thing that the overwhelming majority of us agree on, whether you're a parent, going to be a parent, or you just have a heart for kids, is that children deserve to be protected. We want to advocate and protect for those inside the womb. We also want to advocate and protect those who are outside the womb. This is something that is very important to the overwhelming majority of people. Even when you go to prison, if you are a child predator, you are somebody who gets attacked in prison a lot of times. So there is this like consensus that you don't touch kids, you don't mess with kids. With that said, there are still people who will harm children. And as parents, we don't need to live in fear. We don't need to be helicopter parents, so to speak, necessarily, but we can also use wisdom. We need to learn how to protect our children. And something that I have been convicted about lately is sharing my children online. I don't do a ton of it, but I have done some of it. And I've been seeing people talk about this thing called sharenting. It's like how parents share their kids, and should we be sharing them? Should we not be sharing them? If we're going to be sharing them, how can we safely share them? And other ways that our children can be harmed, even when that's not the intention. You know, we share our kids because we want to share the joyful times in our life. Maybe they won a soccer game, or they just graduated, or something along those lines. They graduated kindergarten or elementary school or middle school or high school or whatever. We want to share those things. We're proud of our children. But is that going to result in harm later on down the line? Are we going to regret sharing those things? Are there other things that we need to know about as parents that can harm our children? You know, who has access to them through the apps that they have? We've done an episode kind of similar, talking about this with Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes, but I really wanted to kind of dive into it from a different perspective today. And I found a woman, this was a suggestion, and I took the suggestion and ran with it. Once I looked her up, I found a woman by the name of Yami Pence, and she is going to help us figure out how we can be protecting our children. So Yami Pence is a former Internet Crimes Against Children, Child Exploitation, and Special Victims Unit detective from South Florida. She spent almost a decade working in this whole world of protecting children, investigating these creeps who are doing awful things to kids, knowing different ways that we can protect them. You know, there's AI out there now. They can steal pictures and do weird stuff with it. There's all kinds of things that she knows and has seen on the law enforcement side of things that we might not even be aware of. And so I wanted to have her on to come talk to us about these things and give us advice on how we can further be protecting our children. You know, like we lock our doors at night, you know, we do these like basic things, but what else is it that we need to know? She's going to dive into all of that with us. And I hope that you can take what she says, put it into action, whether you continue sharing your children online or you stop sharing your children online. You can still take tips from her and how to do things a little bit more safely. And it's not just sharing our kids online that we need to be aware of. There's other things. There's our kids having devices, and neighbors and teachers and so many different things. I want you guys to protect your children. You are their biggest advocate. If you're not going to protect them, who is? Yami, thank you so much for joining today. I actually stumbled upon your account because someone suggested you to me for a possible interview. And I was kind of asking about, which I want to dive into the depths of this later, sharing children online, like sharing our own children online and posting them. And is there anybody who kind of talks about this and the safety issue or aspects of it? And somebody's like, you need to have Yami Pence on. So I went and like looked you up, and you post a lot of really cool stuff. And it was really interesting to be able to see it from a perspective of somebody who has worked in this whole, like, I think it's like kind of a dark world almost, although you are doing good as you did Internet Crimes Against Children.
Yes.
You're a detective. Mm-hmm. And then you've done SVU, you've worked at the Pentagon. Like, you have kind of seen all of it. You know, we hear a lot of people who are on our side of it. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to hear from somebody who sees it from your perspective. So thank you for joining. And I'm really excited to talk to you, learn from you, and hopefully put a lot of things into play in our life with my children.
Awesome. Yes, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and as many podcasts as I can go on, especially now that I'm out of this postpartum season. I am, well, not out of it, but I'm not so fresh. I'm so happy to just always speak to parents and moms, especially like the things that you just won't know or don't know and wouldn't know unless somebody told you, because this is the stuff that I've seen. It's like, it's very, it's just unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable and shocking, and it's not meant for, it's really not meant to exist, right? Like it's not meant to even happen, but they do happen, and it does affect us. Even if our kids are safe tucked in our homes, like it still affects us majorly, and we should learn about it. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, even some of your posts that I was looking through, when you say we won't know if somebody doesn't tell us, genuinely true. Like, there's no
Yeah.
possible way for us to know everything. But I'm looking through some of your things post by post. I'm like, okay, whoa, this app is a problematic thing, or this is problematic, or when we go to the playground, this, or, like all of these different things that I need to be keeping in mind at all times, which feels overwhelming, but
Yeah,
everybody is
it
targeting
does.
our children at an exponential rate. So, kind of give everybody a little bit of your background, what you've done, why you came to be passionate about this topic,
Hmm.
and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it goes way back. I could just go chronologically as a child, like why I even wanted to do this as an adult. As a child, I had a family member, someone very close to me. Some She was abused. She was sexually abused, and I walked in on it. And and I talk about my faith a lot. And so I walked in on it, and I know like the Lord used me in that moment to interrupt the abuse, and it kind of like something worse from happening. And it also, like down the line, taught me so much at such a young age, like that this was even possible. And my discernment grew, and my passion when I saw that, like that child didn't get justice, like that person was not thrown in jail, and all the different, things that came with that. Like I learned so much, and it was a lot of like heartbreaking and, devastating realizations to come to terms with as a child and then a young adult, and now into my 30s. I When I went to choose like what I wanted to do in my life, I went to the University of Florida, go Gators. And I still have these I still have these passions of like I wanted to be in like theater or acting or whatever. Like that was like a passion in my heart. But I also couldn't stop thinking about the kids and how so many kids don't get justice, and how this sexual abuse is just rampant. It's an epidemic in this country, along with human trafficking. There's just so much, and all over throughout the world. And so I'm like, okay. So I did some in college. I did I was talking to like a counselor, and I was passionate about both things, but they encouraged me to go on this path of like wanting to help the children. And I did a couple internships with advocacy centers, and then I ended up in an internship in the Pentagon, for their sexual abuse prevention and response office. And this was like 2012, when they were really dealing with this documentary that came out called The Invisible War, and it was about sexual abuse in the military. And
Mm,
so I learned a lot there from inside the government, right? Like I was just this young kid, no idea. Like I was not a military kid, not a military brat, did no idea the context of military. I was just this Cuban girl
right, right.
from South Florida. And so I go up
Did you
there.
find, can I stop you right there? Because
Mhm.
like I'm gonna lose it really quick, but I want to know, like, when you were working in the Pentagon and you're working with the government, did you find that they were genuinely trying to stop this? Did you, because there's a lot of people who say like the government is corrupt, they're covering it up. We see what's going on with like
Mhm.
the Epstein stuff and all that. Did you find that like they genuinely did want to stop it, and that was your perspective, and did you also see corruption within the system that you worked?
So I worked with contractors and I had like definitely worked with some higher ranking people, but the ones that I worked
Okay.
like one on one with were like contractors. So, and those people definitely had passion and like actually cared and like wrote
Right.
like legal things into that. And, I remember, but like everything was kind of like pre made. Like each branch of the military had their own training on sexual harassment, sexual abuse. And it seemed to be this big response to that documentary of like putting their walls up and like damage control, but at the same time like it was it you did have people that were genuine in there, and so it was kind of like both. Like we got damage control, we're like we look bad, we need to fix this issue, it's a genuine issue, but here, let's pass out all these resources, and here, do all these projects
Yeah.
to like, so that they train the people. But, what I got from that is, wow, like that issue in the military is still an issue, and it's very deep and corrupt. And there's like, the issue that they had to change was like the victims would have to report to their commanders, and the commanders were the ones that were abusing them, and they were stuck in the middle of nowhere at a base somewhere overseas or whatever. Like, there's so many different circumstances. So I did find that was interestingly sad. And it was just like not even 3 months that I was there. So it was a quick internship. It was a really good opportunity. And I realized that I did not want to work in the federal government. So that helped put me on the path, the path to working locally. And I wanted to help children. I'm like, okay, how do I help the kids? Because that was a little kind of discouraging. So I'm like, okay. And then I did an internship with the Child Advocacy Center, and that's where children go to get interviewed after they've been abused. And, they basically have a team that, like, of detectives and, maybe lawyers, state attorneys, and other advocates and therapists that come and help the child. And so I realized, like, I was talking to a mom, and it seemed like I was maybe junior year in college, and I was talking to her, and they had me just as a volunteer intern sitting with the mom in the waiting room while the child gets interviewed for this horrific thing that happened. And I just see mom crying, and it was a dad. It was a dad that abused the child. And so I was just like, no, I need to be able to throw these guys in jail. Like, I needed to do more. So
Right,
I was like,
right.
okay, I guess the only way to do this is I have to be a cop. And so that after college, I started applying to police departments. And in 2014, I got hired here in South Florida. And I did that for 7 years. And pretty quickly, to the dismay of a lot of people that were on the force for longer, that wanted, to be in the detective bureau and all these things that usually take a while, God definitely blessed my path. And I was able to be a detective like in less than 3 years, which is, in the department that I was in, it was pretty unheard of. And because of my passion, like, I went to every single, like, when I was on the road, I went to every single call that I could regarding sexual abuse, child abuse, domestic violence, like whatever I could do to gain that training and experience. And then ultimately got put into the special victims unit. And that was like, if you think of like Olivia Benson on Law and Order,
Mhm.
that's what I did. But then add in child sexual abuse material, or you might know it better as child pornography, even though that's not the like politically correct term. Um, and I did that for my last 3-4 years of being in law enforcement. And so then when I got out of it, it was very apparent that, like, the majority of the problem is lack of education, the phones and the devices being just this access point to predators, and then the predators surrounding the children in real life are using these devices to expose them to child sexual abuse material and to get them to think that this stuff is okay and normal, and in the grooming process. And so I was like, we need to be talking to our kids about pornography. We need to be talking to our kids about body safety and how to, like, raise a red flag and say, no, 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 something weird is happening, and tell mom and dad, tell the safe adult, to get them out of these situations. Because a lot of these kids had parents that cared. They were not all in the poor neighborhoods. They were not all neglected. This was a
Yeah.
variety of kids being abused, and with parents who love them. So what is happening? Where's the, like, miscommunication? And a lot of it is the way we were raised. I wasn't told all this stuff growing up. And that happened to my close family member. And then, that made my awareness much broader. But a lot of people live in a state of, like, ignorance or denial or lack of education. And we can't afford to keep doing that. So,
Yeah, I mean, God, I just listening to you and thinking about the heaviness that must have like come with having to work in that arena and finding these people and like wanting to just like if you're I don't want to say that I actually want to physically harm somebody, but when it comes to children, like
yeah,
that's you
it's
don't
hard.
touch kids. Like that is territory that you don't go. And I'm thinking like we yes, we should always talk about these things with our children, but I feel like it's so much worse now than it was, I don't know how old you are, but when I was younger,
Hmm.
there's definitely things that you should talk about, but I feel like it's opened up to like unlimited
It has.
possibilities for people to be able to target your children.
Yes. And
And
this is due to child sexual abuse material, which, to be very frank, it is videos and images and even gifs of children being raped. Like, that is what it is. It just so that everyone hearing can truly understand the gravity of it and the disgusting reality. And so this specific thing is a worldwide, like, excessive, billions of people consuming and trading and buying and selling this stuff and creating it with the children within their, like, so it's not just like that there are pedophiles and predators out there abusing children. Now their motive and their, like, inner, like, oh, I need to do this, they're watching it, and then it's feeding their sickness, and then they want to do it more. And then the people that they're connecting with online, that's why it's more, because they're connecting with each other all over the world, and they're being encouraged by watching this material. Then they're creating their own material to sell, to trade, and to gain, like, you know like, friends, or gain popularity within that crazy community. And so this epidemic of CSAM being shared all over the world, that is why it's even worse, because it's used to groom the children. It's used to perpetuate the crime and the predators. There's a statistic by the Butner study, and it says, and that was like done a long time ago, so it's probably much higher, but 85% of the individuals that consume that content are hands-on abusers. Like, they just use it to fuel them. So that's why it's even worse. It's because of this thing that we're talking on right now. These phones, these computers, these iPads, and just the dark web and the internet as a whole. It's just, it can be so great and it can be so horrible. And one of the trade-offs of all of the great things that the internet brings is that child abuse is at an all-time high. And this is why. Like, because, and another thing, right? Kids being exposed to pornography at a younger age, like 6 to 8 years old now. They're diving into porn addictions, and then it becomes like numb. Like, that's not enough for them by the time that they hit 12, and now they're going to consume CSAM because somebody sends it to them, right? Because they're hiding this, they're hiding it's in a secret, and they're hiding it, and then they get into this stuff, and they don't grow out of it, and then they become adults and they're addicted to still CSAM, and then they go on to abuse children. Like, it is the devil, honestly. It's just straight up
right.
demonic. And it is like, we all have to realize there's no one group of people that's like a target. Every single person can be affected by this if we aren't careful.
Right. Well, and AI just adds a whole nother layer
Oh,
to it with
yeah.
us sharing these images. So let's talk a little bit. The situation that you said kind of launched you into caring about this. You walked in on a family member being abused. That
By the
person,
babysitter's husband.
right. So that person was a trusted individual. How often is this happening from trusted individuals versus the creepy guy at the grocery store that you happen to walk by?
Over 90%, probably as close, like, close, over 95% at this point, because the over 90% number statistic is from years ago. And so it's over 90% of all child sexual abuse is committed by a close, trusted person. Family, friends, neighbors, like, people you really trust with your kids, because that's how they get access. Like, we're not going to give our kids to a random stranger. We're going to give our kids to someone we know and we trust. And that is the person who has access to your children. And that's so hard. And then the other big staggering statistic is, again, years old statistic, so it's going to be higher now. Over 40%, so probably somewhere between 40 and 50% of all child sexual abuse is by other children. And like, because of the exposure to that material, whether it's pornographic or child sexual abuse material, it is pretty egregious. And some of it is due to children being abused, and then they replicate that with other children because they're trying to make sense of it all. So it's a severe situation.
Yeah, that's wild because there's a lot of people who say, I don't let my kids go anywhere. I don't let anybody watch my kids unless I trust them. And then, but a lot of times it is people that you trust. It's not the
Yes.
slime ball looking person necessarily. It's the
Hmm.
Mr. Rogers character in your life.
Right.
No, no offense to Mr. Rogers. Like, I don't think he was a bad person, but
No.
like they want to look normal. They want to be a trusted individual
Yes.
because they have to gain your child's trust to
Yeah.
be able to do something like this. So if there's a story that stands out to you that you dealt with when you were in law enforcement and you were doing a lot of these cases, what would be one of the most, I guess it would be a really sad situation, but like memorable
Mhm.
ones that kind of, you're like, I will never forget this. I'm sure it's probably all of them.
All of them. I have so many, but let's go to my last one. And this is gonna touch all types of topics. But this young boy was 11 years old, and his father passed away. He goes to a Midwest state to go. Um, I guess he lived here in Florida, and then he went to the Midwest state for the funeral for whatever reason. And his father's twin brother began. He showed 11 years old, showed him pornography, and began to abuse him, sexually abuse him, and but like showing it to him, right, normalizing this behavior, no, and showing him heterosexual pornography and then homosexual pornography, and then saying like, we could do that, would you like me to do that? And like, again, he's piquing this child's interest. This child's going through trauma, just lost his dad, and maybe like twisting it. I don't want to say exactly how he did it, but a lot of the times they twist relationships and say, this is what family does, and I'm teaching you so you can grow up and become a man, whatever. And so, and it's different, right? Because a lot of the times we talk about female victims, and this is a male. And his mom sent him to his uncle all throughout these years, and I didn't get to him until he was 17. And so he was groomed and he was abused. And every time that the uncle would come to visit him in Florida, and every time he would go to visit the uncle, and this is mom's like saving grace in her mind, like, oh, thank God he has his uncle. Thank God, because he lost his dad. He has a safe male figure to lean on, and like, family, what more can I ask for? And the whole time, this kid is being destroyed from the inside out. And finally, the only reason, because he wasn't going to say anything, right? And it goes into shame, right? Because he's going through school and he's saying like what it is to be a manly man, and what am I doing with my uncle? And I don't think everybody's doing this with their uncles. And like, those realizations come bit by bit. And then ultimately he his uncle, the predator, the subject, the suspect, whatever you want to call him, ended up sending a, an image of child sexual abuse material on Facebook Messenger. It wasn't of his nephew, the one that got flagged. But some of these images and videos, they float around the internet. They're identified as actual children. And sometimes the children are rescued. Sometimes they're images on the internet and they have not been able to find the children. But either way, there's a database that it's called value, a hash value for each of those images and videos. And that way, if it's found in anybody's Facebook account, anybody's Instagram, anybody's Snapchat, and so many other internet or electronic service providers, they're required by law to report that. Like, it'll flag in their system, and then they have to report it to National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, and that gets sent to internet crimes against children detectives throughout the country and the world, because other countries have these detectives too. But that's, so I got one image, and then I got this file and his account. Facebook sends me everything. FYI, Apple doesn't really do this, and they should, but they don't. And I
Oh,
and this is
interesting.
and this is horrible, and this is important to know, because this boy was being abused from 11 to 17 years old, but Apple had images and things in that guy's devices in his iCloud from years and years back. So he could have been flagged and sent to a detective in his home state, and then the detective would have figured things out. You know what I mean? Because he had pictures of his nephew, right? Because at this point, they're not just abusing the child; they are documenting it, because it's like a trophy for them. And so he had that all in his devices along with other child sexual abuse material, and that's how I got him. And I figured out, okay, the uncle lives here in Fort Lauderdale, and the nephew lives somewhere else. That's what it was, and he was getting flown in. Sorry, it was a few years ago, but yeah, now it makes sense. And so he was getting flown in and out of Fort Lauderdale every year, doing visits, and And I was able to, because I took my time, and I had the caseload of like 3 people at the time. So that's another problem, right? We don't have enough law enforcement to do this
Yeah.
specific job. There's not enough funding. A couple years back, Governor Newsom actually cut the funding for these specific detectives that do
Of
this
course.
specific
Good.
job. But then he got so much blowback by both sides of the aisle that he
Good.
gave it back.
Good.
So thank God for that. That both sides of the aisle, they care about children to at least some extent, because yeah, he made a lot of people not happy. So back to the story, I reading all that took me hours. Like, and thankfully at the time I didn't have the 3 kids that I have now. I don't. I had one child and one was in my belly, and I was just staying late, and I'm like, something is pulling me. And again, I talk about my faith all the time. I felt like the Lord, like, stay right there in that chair, keep reading. And I'm reading a lot of it is just disturbing sexual content, not necessarily illegal. But then I know that he had sent at least one message with that CSAM image of a little boy being abused, unfortunately. So I'm like, okay, but that's a known image. It came from a different, like, the origination of that photo came from somewhere else, but he had it in his Facebook. So clearly the guy is interested in children. So then I finally glanced up and he's talking about his nephew. And then I'm like, your nephew, that's a red flag. And then I read and he's just bragging about what he's been doing to his nephew. I finally find pictures and then I do a long investigation and I'm able to, this, where the federal government does help, I was actually deputized with the FBI along with my local jurisdiction. I was like, for the county, I was deputized. With the FBI, I was deputized. And then I also had the jurisdiction of my local city down here. And so those resources did help to like facilitate, flights and interviews. And I was able to use agents to help me do all that being super pregnant. I mean, I was just about to go on maternity leave when this guy finally got arrested. So, and I was able to get help getting him federally indicted. So he should not come out before he passes. And that's how long it took. He from 11 years old to 17 years old, even though images of this child and being abused and they were chatting, right? So like, think about it. Like, you should be able to trust your child's uncle, and they're chatting in like secret apps and sexting and all these things. And I use that term lightly because you can't sext with a child. It's all abuse. It's all of it
Yeah.
is it's either, the statutes here are just like solicitation or enticement of a minor, and then obviously sexual abuse and
Grooming. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and child sexual abuse material, different statutes, all these. He violated a lot of things and really took his time with this kid to keep him quiet. And the only thing that freed this child was being flagged by this federal law that these internet service providers have. And we really need to put pressure on that. There's so many levels. Pressure on the fact that these people like Apple need to, if they would have flagged it and they would have found the stuff in this guy's devices, it would have been years ago. It would have been years ago that this kid was freed, and he would have a lot more years of healing and therapy under his belt before he like turned 18. And now he's a
Right.
17-year-old that has to deal with all of these things and confusions that none of it was his fault. Um, you know, and so that one was a big one for me, and it was the last case I did before I left.
Oh.
Another one was just to show you the differences in how pertinent this material is, this evil material. They can do it with AI, and they can make like digital or cartoon looking child sexual abuse material. So, and one guy was flagged by Microsoft, and he was using like, I don't know what to send images back and forth. I can't remember right now, but it was cartoon images. So like of a 5-year-old little girl and a dad looked like,
Ugh.
and right. So, and this is like a cartoon image, but then he also had other child sexual abuse material images. And he actually had a 5-year-old daughter. So the fact that I was able to get him on those charges, and then over time we would interview the child and, see if there's anything going on there. But I think she was living somewhere else with her mom, and it was a back and forth situation. But like, that really stood out to me as like, it just proves that study over and over. Over 85% of the people who consume this content are actively abusing real life children. It's not just, a lot of people want to minimize child pornography or child sexual abuse material and say, oh, it's just that's how they get it out of their system. Like there's people who are born pedophiles, and that's how they get it out of their system. No, this is making it worse. And then they'll use like child sex dolls, and there's just so much we could go down. But those are just two
Yeah.
that stand out in my mind. That like the wife of this man, right? Like that I had charged. She was like, "You're telling me, like, I can't really. It's hard for me to believe what you're telling me is true because." Everything that I know and that I have lived with this man for 20 something years would be a complete lie. And, and we just have to realize that we need to believe children and we need to believe evidence, right? And that it really has the potential to be anybody. And just like the story you told me from your life, the story that I just told you about my family member, and it was the babysitter's husband. Many times it's the babysitter's older children, younger children. Like it really just depends. And there's so many
Right.
different ways things can happen, and we just have to believe our kids. Like that's the number one thing. This staggering statistics. I don't want to say the number off the top of my head, but it's like between 80 and 90, 85 to 95, something like that. Very high percentage children don't lie. They don't. They don't make this stuff up. They don't want to they don't want to like make that stuff up, very rare that they are lying, and they need to be believed, and we need to hold people accountable, and we need to teach them and keep them safe. And the internet, like, and the sharing and the AI is just getting worse and worse and worse. The sextortion, another one was a sextortion case where a girl had shared like a you would call a nude image. She was a teenage girl, and the person on the other side tricked her and started using it against her and saying and basically holding her like hostage. Like, if you don't want me to send this image of you to your parents, to the school, to everybody on your friends list, then you need to tell me when you wake up, and you need to send me a picture, and you need to go in the bathroom when I tell you, and do this in the shower to yourself and take a video of it. And
Oh
this
my
is
God.
like people who are home, they're under their parents' roof, and their parents think they're safe, but they're literally prisoner to someone over their phone and in their mind, right? Because they don't, their undeveloped brains are like fearful. Like some of them have been, I have seen threaten the child that they're going to kill their whole family. The younger children really believe that to be true. And they end up like taking videos and images of themselves creating child sexual abuse material themselves at the demand of these people, and it's called sextortion. And they truly believe that they're going to die, or their family's going to get hurt, or they're going to be embarrassed or get in trouble, whatever. And they comply with these demands, and they, like, I've seen messages go out to little kids say like, where are you? And the kid will be like, I'm on the bus, oh, send me a picture to prove that you're on the bus. Like, because they'll be like,
Mhm.
hey, like, come send me a picture with your shirt off, or send me a picture with your pants off, like demanding this check. Can you imagine being like 11 years old or 12 or 13, and like like having this unknown character over your phone like own you like that? Like that's horrific. And that is
Yeah.
happening at an exponential rate. So,
It's just such a testament to why we don't need to have so many of these apps. Children don't need to have at all. If
nope.
they are going to have them and you are going to allow it, you need to be checking them
Hmm.
100%.
Absolutely.
I have a 16-year-old and who has a social media app for the sake of sports. It's on my phone. It's not even on
Yeah.
his phone. Like
Yeah.
there's not going to be anything that is on his phone that he doesn't even know the password to it. I've got the password. I'm sorry if that embarrasses him. If his friends make fun of him for it, I don't care.
Yeah.
This stuff is not going to happen under my watch as much as I can possibly prevent it.
Yes.
So when it comes to all of this stuff, there's got to be ways that we can be talking to our children. What is the best way to teach our children about body safety? Like, how do we explain to our children what is safe, what's not safe, in the way that they're going to resonate with, and we can do our best to actually protect our children?
Yeah. So I love using books, but before the books, I start at like 2 years old, like when they can start talking, and you just like when you're giving them baths, when you're, changing, when you're in the bathroom, like, you know, use proper anatomically correct words to teach them, okay, like this is your arm, this is your leg, this is your vagina, this is your butt. Like use their proper terms. Don't be afraid of them. Make them comfortable talking about like what that name is and what the other name is, and let them know that these are private. And I use my faith in everything that I do, and I say, God made you. He made you wonderfully. He says that when he made you, he made your whole body. He says that is all good, and all these parts of your body are great, but these parts are private and they're only for you. And so I just keep it really simple. Private means only for you. And then once they really get that and they understand that my body is my body and nobody can touch me unless I say okay. And on my private parts, nobody can touch me ever. And then we, do the nuanced where mommy and daddy will help you clean. And this is how they help you clean. And if you go to daycare or aunt's house for babysitting, if somebody has to wipe you in the bathroom, they're going to use a wipe or a piece of toilet paper. They're not going to bare hand touch you in any of your private parts. Really give them very specific, like, okay, this is how that goes. Okay, this is how that goes. Really matter of fact and very slow and over time. At 2, they're just saying basic words. At 3 and 4, they can get more. And as you see that they've got hit a check mark, like, okay, I understand privacy. I understand personal space. I understand maybe consent where I could say no or I could say yes. And even do I have to hug and kiss everybody at the party, or do I get to say no to that? Or can I just wave or say hi or fist bump, There's a lot to that, teaching consent and teaching body safety. And then, explain the difference between safe and unsafe touch, which would be anything they're not okay with would be unsafe, right? Like if they're don't want to be touched on the upper leg, technically not a private part, but also pretty close to your private parts, and it's a drip by drip method, which I got that term from Chris McKenna at Protect Young Eyes. And I don't know if you've ever seen his page, but he is a great
We've
resource.
had him on the podcast.
Oh, you
He's
have?
fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really, he's amazing. Such an inspiration and really helpful content, really helpful blog posts. So if anybody's hearing me and you just need help, dive into his stuff. But yeah, so you just give them, and you your kids, right? One kid could be more anxious, one kid could be nothing could phase them, so you just give them what they can handle at the stage that they can handle it, but definitely don't hesitate to do it. Don't wait until you think they can handle all of it at once, because you're still going to have to spread it out, because no small child is going to want to sit for a really long conversation. You're not going to want to do it how we're speaking, eye to eye, because that stresses kids out a little bit, an interview style. We're going to have to, while we're playing, while we're doing bath time, while we're driving, on the way to a play date, we're going to do body safety check-ins where we remind them of the body safety rules. And I have 3 videos at the top of my page pinned where I talk about tricky people and what is a tricky person. So instead of saying predators are people who touch your private parts, I say tricky people can be anyone. They could be a child, they could be a friend, they could be family, they could be a teacher, they could be, and I just list, not all at once. I'm just doing this for the sake of time, but I list over time what a tricky person does. And a tricky person is someone who breaks the body safety rules, who tries to get you to keep a secret, and that's one of the body safety rules. We do not keep secrets. Secrets are not safe. Happy surprises are safe. If we're going to give mommy a present for Mother's Day, we don't have to tell her what the present is until later, because it's a happy surprise. But if there's no expiration date on the secret, then it's not a safe one. We're not keeping safe, we're not keeping secrets, from mommy and daddy or from our safe adults. If somebody's trying to keep hush-hush something, then most likely it's not a safe situation, and we need to come to mommy and daddy about it. Same goes for safe pictures and unsafe pictures, or good, bad pictures. There's a book by Defend Young Minds. Her name is Kristen. Can't think of her last name, but it's a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and there's a junior version that it's based off. It's about pornography, and but they just label it as good or bad pictures. You can do safe or unsafe pictures, just back in the day was good touch, bad touch, but I like to use safe or unsafe, because the connotations that good and bad have can lead to shame. So if someone does abuse the child, they feel bad now. Oh, they did a bad thing to me, now I'm bad. And a lot of times grooming will lead to the perpetrator to say you're going to get in trouble for this too if you say anything, and threats. So I try to be well, it's unsafe, and that would never be your fault. That unsafe touch would never be your fault. That's a tricky person, and you come as soon as you can, tell mommy or daddy or the next safe adult that you see, and try your best not to wait and don't be afraid. You'll never get in trouble. A lot of like re-encouraging talking and explanations of these things over time. And then once they get it, at least the gist of it, then you do your body safety check-ins before they go places, and you say, all right, who can tell me the body safety rules, or remember the body safety rules today? And then when they come back from their event, you do the check-in again, and you can make it a lot more tame and just like, what was your favorite part of today? What was your least favorite part? Did anything make you uncomfortable? And, go from there. But the more you open that communication, that you don't, we as adults have to regulate ourselves and our nervous systems, and we have to be prepared. And the whole, for a child to break the news of something to you, we can't panic. Because sometimes they'll give you, they'll test you. And I know I just did this as a kid. I would give you a little bit of information and see how you take it. Do you yell at me? Does your face change? Do you freak out? Do you tense out? Okay, then I'm not going to give you any more information. But if you are regulated and you're prepared and you're comforting, then I may tell you a little more. And those are just a lot of really good things to keep in mind when we're talking to our kids about this, and to kind of make it a lifelong conversation. Because at the point where they're rolling their eyes and they're like, okay, mom, I know. And it's kind of a good thing. I'm glad that you have heard it so many times. It makes you roll your eyes, because then it's really in there.
Yeah, no, and that's what we want. We want them to know that they could recite it in their sleep kind of thing. So when it comes to abusers, is the statistic true that men are the primary abusers? I mean, there are women abusers as well. We've seen that. But it's primarily men, right?
Yes, I would say so. In my experience, I had mostly men abusers, but and that came with the child sexual abuse material, because I'm seeing the actual abuse happen. So I'm seeing mostly men. I'm seeing mostly men possess that material and getting caught with that material. And also, when cases come in, it's mostly male perpetrators and the ones that I'm arresting. But there is a newer trend, right? Because of this, it's getting any human mind that is watching this content, it just makes them sicker and sicker. So I did see content with adult female abusers. And it honestly depends on, if they were maybe abused as a child or maybe not. Maybe they're just sick and depraved. And so there is a possibility of that. And we have to remember that, and not to just assume because it's a lady that we're good. And then randomly, that's something that came to my mind today to mention was satanic ritual abuse. That is a whole nother topic that is very real. It's very real. And that is something, when we allow our children to other people's houses, that specific thing, they specifically act like wholesome, clean, happy families. And then they have this dark secret that they act that way. So it's just, little tidbits to keep in mind, hey, most of the time it's going to be okay, but there are possibilities, and we do have to use discernment in this area. Pray a lot, seek wisdom, take time. You don't have to say yes or no right away. You don't have to, it's tough when your kids are pressuring you and they're teenagers and they're like, come on, I'm never allowed to do anything, mom, take a chill pill, trust me. And it's it's not you that that it's not you that I don't trust. It's the others. It's the random people that are going to come over while you're at that person's house, or it's the device that's going to come up and now you're going to have to get something seared in your brain. I had done another podcast today, and she, when I was talking about sleepovers and play dates and stuff, when people just pull something up, and she didn't even have it on her notes, but a memory came up, and she's like, oh, I remember when I was at a hotel and my sister and I were just flipping through the channels and porn came up. And it's these things really, they get seared in your mind. And imagine and sleepovers and stuff, when that gets seared in one child's mind, or if it's in their home and they have access to it and they finally do a sleepover, nobody may know about it, and then that kid's oh, you gotta see this great, it's not even this sexual deviance, but they're this thing is crazy, you gotta see this, these people in this video are doing crazy stuff, it's bananas, and they put it in, or they click on it and they go back to the website, and now your kids are dealing with that in their brain. It could pornography can be addictive, they've got studies that show it's crack cocaine, and their brain lights up in all different places because it's so bizarre what they're watching. The devil's in the
Yeah, the
details.
dopamine effect. No, yeah, no kidding. It's wild. And knowing who our kids' friends are and exactly who they're talking to and, kind of keeping on top of all of those things. I know that some people say, you're paranoid or you're this. I'm like, no, I'm just, honestly, it's wisdom. Not
Yeah.
everybody is trustworthy. There was a time and a place I would say that I was a little bit paranoid. I think I watched too much Law and Order and Criminal
Yeah.
Minds and all of those things. I'm at the
Yeah.
grocery store checking out and I'm like, serial killer, serial killer, serial killer. Like for sure
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I probably should like back off the show. Or maybe I was right. Maybe I could be the next detective. But I think there's a place of like, who cares if somebody says that you're paranoid or a helicopter parent or something along those lines? Like, obviously, you want your children to be able to do things, but you want to do it
Yeah.
and allow it with wisdom. Make
Yes.
sure that you're checking off all these boxes. Make sure that you're checking in with the parents. You're talking to the parents. You're on the same page with the parents. You know
Yeah.
who the kids are. You know what they're going to be doing. All of these things, and there's so many ways that kids can get around half of the rules, and being aware of
Yeah.
how they can get around those rules.
Mhm.
So,
Where there's a
what
will,
is
there's a way.
100%. I've been a teenager before.
Yeah.
Like,
There's a
I
will,
think
there's a
we
way.
know.
So,
Yeah, we definitely know. So you've seen the devices these pedophiles have used. What are the ways that they're getting access to the kids the most? Would you say it's like video games, or would you say it's social media? Would you say what would you say that is their number one way to get a hold of our kids?
in 2021, most of my cases were Snapchat and Facebook, and which was like Meta, like before they turned into Meta,
Yeah.
like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Roblox, Minecraft, things like that. Like wherever there's a chat room, the predators are there. And there
They're
is a
there.
statistic that the FBI gave 2022 ish that is like 500 million predators online every day, like looking for
Yeah.
kids. So that's a big number, and that is a lot of like for our kids to have to combat and deal with. Like, my goodness, they should be able to hop on a game without dealing with any of that. But they're there. They're there. They're
Yeah.
waiting. They teach each other how to do these things. There are manuals. Yep, manuals that pedophiles have created to help other pedophiles figure out how to abuse
Oh
children with
my
success.
gosh.
Yeah. These are the things that I found in these people's devices, and it's disturbing. And there's an industry. Like, this is an industry, like that they want to sell, buy, entice you to abuse the children in your life and to make videos of it and send it to them. And then they do the same thing. And it's, one big evil industry. Um, yeah, where were we before that? I'm trying to think because I have so many things
No,
that I want to say. But
you're fine. I've still got a couple more questions I'd love to even get to. So as a former child sexual assault detective, how do you feel about sleepovers?
I don't love them. I think that there has been so many cases that I've had to deal with, and that I've seen and heard, right, like in my own community, in my own life, where abuse happens, and it's like most of the time it's just not worth it. And you can know everything about the people that you're trusting. You can know everything about this family, but the thing is that they don't have it on their foreheads. If there's a child in the house or an older teen or someone that they have over, even if it's like the older sibling's friend that comes over at the last minute, and like the mom in that house isn't going to want to like say no to one child when they have the other friend there at the last minute, and it's a lot of pressure, right? And then what are they going to do? Call you, hey, can my son have a friend over? Like, okay, what's that? Like, so many
Mm,
nuances and so many ways things can go wrong. It's just, to me, it's almost never worth it. But then there's times when you need help, like you need childcare help, and you need aunt to take your kids for a sleepover because you've got a work trip or something. There's so much nuance to it. I personally will only do it if I really have to, and that's with like my sister. I do
yeah.
take my niece and nephews to come, and I take care of them too. But I have my kids sleep in my room, or I sleep in their room, or my husband would, just to make sure there's no, like, just to keep it safe, right? Like, because things happen between siblings, between cousins,
Right.
and it
Yeah.
happens. Sometimes it's not this super malicious thing, and it's just exploratory because they were exposed maybe to pornography or whatever. Sometimes it's just them even sharing things that they heard their friends say at school. It's just, I like to be as present as possible and control the controllable, and then leave the rest,
Mm-hmm.
to how you teach your kids, how you talk to them, the rules that you have in the house, even internet blockers in the home. Like if one of those kids bring a device into your home, like they shouldn't
Yeah.
be able to access certain things if they're logged onto your Wi-Fi. But if it's a cell device, that's a whole nother story. It's like if it has their own cellular connection, it's tough. It's tough. And I would say I would lean toward no overall. But I have little kids, so I'm not to the point where my kids are crying and begging and all that. And I do have good experiences of sleepovers in my own life, but the bad did not outweigh the good. Or I'm sorry, the
Totally.
bad did outweigh the good. The good did not outweigh the bad.
Yeah, yeah,
So to
yeah.
me, it wasn't worth it. And I wish that my mom had been more strict on it, but it was most of the time it was because she needed the help. She was a single mom for a good chunk.
Yeah.
So,
And it's
yeah, it's
tough.
just,
I can imagine your mom wishes she
yeah,
was more strict on it. But then at the same time, when you have your kids pulling on you and they're like, please, mom, please, it's
yeah,
tough.
it's
Sometimes you
tough.
have to be the bad guy.
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes you have to say no for the sake of, protecting your child.
Yep. And then when you see something happen in your community or on the news or someone that you like know of, you're like, wow, I'm glad that I was more strict on that, because it's totally not worth it. And yeah, your kids are not going to get it. Like, thankfully, right? Because we're not telling them the horrible details of life, but they're not going to get it for a while and they're going to be pretty mad. But
Yeah.
if you can foster a relationship with them where there's times where curiosity can be allowed, and there's times when we should and can explain our kids our decisions. Like, this is why I don't want to do this, and this is why I want to do that. But sometimes things are just beyond their development level, or like just to protect their mind or their innocence. There's some things where they're just going to have to trust you and say, you're just going to have to trust me that this is a
Yeah.
no. And this is one of those things that when you're a lot older, we can talk about it. But right now, you just have to trust me, and no is because I love you and I am protecting you. And
Yeah.
even though you don't understand it, just trust me because I'm your mom. And that's a relationship that you have to build. But I know that most people that had those parents growing up that were like, you have a bed at home, you're gonna go sleep at your house, like I'll come
Yeah.
pick you up, you know. They resented that until their 30s, and then they have kids and they're like, oh no, you ain't sleeping over anybody, like
Yeah.
it's definitely hard. I lean toward no. I see a lot of stuff happen at sleepovers. Like, it's just the truth.
Yeah. Okay. So this next question is going to trigger people. And I want a yes or no answer. Don't beat around the bush. Should we be posting our children online?
No. Nope.
Why?
Well, there's so many reasons. So depending on, there's more risk for people who have a larger following, and there's more risk for people who have a public large following. So we're talking about public platform and we're talking about private platforms. There's a risk to both. And I will tell you that I have a private platform with like around 80 people that I share pictures of my kids on. But not just any pictures. I'm pretty picky on what I share and videos and stuff. But it's because they're people I want to stay connected to that I actually talk to regularly. And I'm very comfortable with who's on there. But there was a time when I had a different platform that I've had since since it was Facebook, and that I had since Facebook opened. And then there was too many pictures for me to take down. Once I really got into this career, and I realized ooh, I'm sharing way too many details. Why am I doing this? Because this generation of millennials, we grew up with the creation. This happened while we were adolescents and young adults, and our brains weren't fully developed. And now we got trained into just posting everything we're doing, what we're eating, what we're, everything. And it's oversharing. It's called sharenting or oversharenting, which is sharing and parenting, like a combo word. And we're sharing so much that overlaps into our lives when we have that first baby and that child, and we're so proud, and they're so cute and precious and beautiful, and we're proud of their accomplishments as they grow. It is normally a very innocent and good-hearted, look at my amazing child, I love them. And even for the big influencers and the big YouTubers and all those things, like most of the time it's from a good place. Like they're not trying to exploit their children, but they may accidentally be exploiting their children. And they are
Totally.
definitely, if it's a big platform, they are risking, they're taking a lot of risks, unfortunately. And there's a lot of things out there that these predators that I don't expect the moms listening to understand or know, because they didn't have the job that I did. They didn't see these guys' phones and iPads and computers and the screenshots and the video recordings and the things that they had of children that parents shared. And so you may be providing somebody with material that they're going to use nefariously and disgustingly, possibly transform with AI and use your child's face as something horrible in the dark web. Um, even fixate in like a fan club on the dark web for your child because your child's face is
Oh,
on the internet. Yeah, it's more common than people think. There's also digital kidnapping when people will take like pictures of your kids and then create a separate account and get a following and like say that every day like they're going out with your child and all these things. These are pictures you shared, but they're creating like a false life, a false
gosh.
persona. Very common. It's called digital kidnapping. And then there's people in your actual area that follow you, and then you go into the grocery store and they come and say hi to your kid. Like say your daughter or son is with your husband at the store, but you're the face of your account, and so is and your kids are there too because it's like a typical mom account, and they're gonna go and say hi to your daughter Jackson. Say hi Jackson, like, oh, didn't you just have a birthday? And can you imagine how Jackson feels? Like, who are you and how do you know all that about me? Right?
Yeah.
Because these kids, they can't consent to the oversharing that the parents are doing. They have no idea that millions or thousands or whatever of people are watching their day-to-day lives. If they knew that, they would feel so weird. It would be like the cameras, the Duggar family, the cameras coming in and like you feeling like you're being watched. Like, but it's like a whole new level of that because there's no regulation in sharing of children. And like there's, like I said, there's two pegs. There's the regular everyday mom like me, and then there's the people who have giant accounts and they make their living
Right.
off of this, and they've been sharing their kids for 10 years, but or 5 years or ever, maybe they were sharing for 10 years and they started having a kid 5 years in, and little by little, it just I'm just, to them they're like, I'm just sharing my day to day, and I'm just sharing because I'm so proud of their accomplishments. But you don't realize like there's an article that I pulled up yesterday and like a quote from the New York Times that said, let's see, okay, so like a creep on, I was either a mom's account or a mom that made the child's account, but it's a mom ran account, very
Hmm.
popular child, and it says it's like a candy store to one of the pictures of the kids. It's like a candy store with all the heart eye emojis, and it says God blessed Instamoms because he's saying because you're providing me with stuff that I can go use later. Like disgusting, disgusting,
And aren't
and
there aren't there certain photos that they prefer over other photos? Like what are some photos
yes,
that if a mom is going to be posting their child, we
yeah,
should steer clear of? I mean, obviously no naked baby photos, but
yeah.
aside from those, like what are the ones that they like? I've heard like ice cream photos is something that really is something that
Yeah.
these type of people really enjoy. What are some more that we should definitely not be posting?
So, really random stuff, but things that I vividly remember, pictures of kids sleeping, like that intimate moment that you as a parent
Ah,
only have access to. That your sweet little cute baby sleeping, and you're just like, look at that. Don't you love it when they're sleeping because they're so quiet and snuggly and cute?
right.
That is for
Yeah.
your eyes only, mamas. That is your blessing from God to be able to enjoy your babies. These creeps like to look at that because they have fantasies that they do with those things. They like feet pictures. They like diapers, babies in diapers. They like bathing suits, and they like the little, depending on like what kind of dance or cheer costumes they have. Sometimes they're very tiny shorts and like little bra type of, tops and stuff like those.
Those make
Love
me uncomfortable.
those.
I don't, I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Don't post those things.
Yeah. They shouldn't even be wearing them. They should cover those girls up more.
That, yes, that too. That too.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
that's
that's and
number
that's my
one.
personal opinion, but that's the kind of stuff that I would see in these guys' phones. On then, the next, like you could slide one, that there's one image of a clothed child, but something that a parent most likely posted, and then the next image is a child being sexually abused, like a
Mm.
different child. But that's like they would keep it in their groups of photos and videos that they would use for their own nefarious purposes. So, like,
There was a,
are you comfortable having the photo or video that you're going to post, the possibility that somebody in your list of thousands of followers may be following you because they know you have kids and they may like that photo and they may take it, you know? Yeah.
And it's disturbing to think about. I used to do more of the mom blogging, lifestyle blogging kind of content, and I used to post my children. And there was one time I remember, it's kind of when I shifted gears a little bit, but I still shared my kids, and I do a little bit still, but I'm much more picky about it now. And this person, like, total weird looking account, weird, creepy guy looking, and who knows if it was even that person,
Yeah.
behind the account, but went and I'm talking went like years back in some of my pictures and liked only the pictures where my little girls were in swimsuits. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, or in a diaper. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't post that. Why did I post that? What an idiot. Why did I do that? And I totally was
Yeah.
like so creeped out by it. Immediately deleted the photos, immediately blocked this person.
Yeah.
Went through and deleted some other photos, and I probably should, continue to clean out photos. I
Yeah.
know, like, on Instagram, my platform is much more public, and so I am a little bit more strict about what I post there. And then even on Facebook, I've been going through almost every day and deleting friends. I'm like,
Takes
okay, knew you in high
forever.
school, haven't talked to you in 10 years. Why are we
Yeah.
even Facebook friends? Like, I'm sharing my kids. I don't
Exactly.
know what kind of person you are. You may be, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. You may be a phenomenal human being.
Yeah.
I love my kids more though.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I have a
it's,
rule. If I haven't talked to you in 6 months, love you.
yes,
Not gonna let you see pictures of my kids as they grow. That's intimate. Like that's like for grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncles, like, people that I would be sharing photos with via text message, but it's easier to do it here. That's why I have those accounts, like, and I had to delete my
totally.
Facebook account because I was overwhelmed by the amount of people that I was like, I can't delete everybody. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
delete this whole
I just keep
account.
deleting people. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think at one point I had like 2,500 Facebook friends. I'm down to probably still way too many. I think it's like 762 when I look today. And I deleted probably 20 people today. And I'm just going to continue to go through, delete, delete, delete.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about like family photos? Is that something, I mean, I guess they could still crop out your child,
Hmm.
but are like, if I post a photo of my family on Easter, is that
Hmm.
going to deter people more, like these creepy people, or you're just
Yeah.
like no photos with kids?
I mean, it's totally going to be up to you, right? Like, are you okay
But
with
what
somebody
would you
screenshotting
say?
that?
Like you're the,
What would I
what would
do?
you say?
What would I do? I mean, I don't share my kids like that. And I was
Okay.
tempted when I started my account because I wanted to share this as a genuine mom with kids. And I started, and my kids would pop up because they were even younger. And so they were all over me. And I was like, I can't even get on this page at all and share anything, especially stories, if they don't pop in my stories because they're kind of like, I can't figure out how to block them out. So
Right.
I'm
You're on
like,
the
so
toilet and there they are.
they're everywhere. So I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever. But then I personally, my personal is because I used to arrest people. And, my husband's in law enforcement. Like, I don't have any desire for people to know what my kids look like. I just don't want them to, like, I don't want them to run into my kids at the park with my husband and know that they're my kids because their face is on my Instagram and I'm not even there. And so that's funny because I've seen, like, there's an influencer that I follow, been following for many years, and she is like holistic. She's got like maybe 150,000 followers, and she always shared her daughter. And I loved her account, very similar values to me. And I was like, she's such a beautiful little girl, but I'm like, please don't, in my head, like, please don't share. And then she followed my account. And then I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I'm like, okay, hopefully this helps. And still shared her daughter. And then one day, everything of her daughter had been taken off and all these things. And it was
Is
exactly
this
that.
Courtney?
Yeah,
I follow
it
her too.
is.
I love her. She's like my
Love,
crunchy queen. I've
love
followed her for years and
her.
I've learned so
Me
much from
too.
her.
Me
Um,
too. Love
she
her.
doesn't
Super
follow
fan.
me yet, but maybe one day we'll get her on the show or something like that. But I saw her recently. She did. She shared her daughter a lot. And then
Yeah.
she recently had a conviction. That's so interesting that it came after she followed you and some of your content.
Yeah. And
If
I
you
think
guys don't know
she's,
who we're talking about, Courtney Kayla
yeah,
Kala, I'm not sure how you
I
say
think
her
it's
last name.
Kayla. Mhm.
She's a chiropractor and huge in the wellness space and health and wellness, non-toxic, all that kind of stuff, which I just eat up these days. But I specifically remember her post saying, I'm not going to be sharing my daughter anymore. I
Yeah.
don't. Maybe it was on stories or something like that. But I remember her
Yeah.
saying that. Wow.
Yeah, so basically she followed me and like we would go back and forth sometimes, but then she did like a whole like she kind of got off social media for a while and she unfollowed everybody, which is genius so that you can't scroll so much because it's so addicting and time consuming. So she
Mm.
unfollowed everybody, but she also took her daughter off, and then I was like kind of like reading her stories or whatever it was that she had shared. I can't recall exactly if it was a specific post or not, but what had happened was somebody recognized her daughter at like a playground or at some public area, and they called her by name, and like that is scary. Like if your kid's running around a playground and they say, Jackie, and Jackie turns around and she's like, "Where's mom? Who is that?" Like it had freaked her out so much. Like, the interaction, you get the vibe from people and you're like, this is not okay. That like I could not be around. My child could be at school. My child could be XYZ. And they're going to know my child because of me, because of my content that I'm choosing to post. And they're going to be like, why so like, it's kind of like being halfway famous. Like, random people in this world know who I am and I don't know who they are, and like
Hmm.
what do they know about me? What is my mom posting? And at one point we're going to have to answer for everything, right? Like every mom in the future is going to have to answer to her kids any questions that they have about their upbringing. And God forbid like your child's face becomes the center. And honestly, there's more risks to mom influencers who have children that people fall in love with, right? And you may have a very genuine audience that loves your kids. And I can think of
Hmm.
so many off the top of my head, but I really don't want to call people out in a negative light, because I have like compassion for these people and these families. But like they'll like very like 2 million followers on their account, and their kids are shining stars on their accounts. And that with 2 million followers, you have a large chunk of that audience that is nefarious purposes. That's just that's just the truth. And so they can create little obsessions with your kids. And like now, one day, if your kid ever gets a stalker because of the info that you share, or and
Right.
then you have to
Yeah.
go through that process, or if they, a dark web page gets created and you have to come to your child and say, hey, this happened because we share our life on the internet and that's my job. You have to
Hmm.
explain that to your child, and like that's going to be some like your own conviction. Like, am I okay? And I knew that even with my small following, I'm like a micro influencer, and I don't even call myself an influencer. I just do education. I'm like, I do not need to share my kids on this account. This makes no sense. So that's why I like flat out won't do it. Also because law enforcement background, vengeance, anything like that, I have no desire for my kids to be identifiable, not even by names. And they have such cute names. Sometimes like I just want to share, like I just had a baby 7 months ago. I'm like, I want to share his beautiful name and how God gave me the name and like all these things, because we're isolated in this mom world sometimes, and like you want to
Yeah.
like share with the mom friends that you make, but unfortunately for me, I just don't see that it's worth the risk. And like, but right, to be fair, risk can happen anyways. So just to like contradict my own point and to show you, there was a mom who had a private account, Facebook, and her daughter was being posted on the dark web for sale. Family photos that she had posted on Facebook. The mom, a guy
Oh
from
no.
church, stole the photos, put them on the
Oh.
dark web, got information about the girl, where she lives, what her, maybe not her home address, but like a lot of details, like where she goes to school, how much she's selling her for. Because he was a pedophile and he was selling her to other
Wow.
pedophiles. And they didn't even know him like that, but she had accepted him to her Facebook account because, oh, that's a guy from church. And that just
Mm.
happened in April 2020. I'm sorry, it was published August 2023. And that was in Georgia. And he's in jail. And okay, and then there's another one where like we could do all this, have private accounts, never post our kids, blah, blah, blah. And then this guy, this is the one that was in April 2024. Florida man accused of taking girl's picture using AI to create child pornography or child sexual abuse material. And so what that is when they use one of those videos that I talked about of children being raped, and they put another child's face on that child's face, and in order to satisfy their fantasy or with that specific child. And that guy was the neighbor. He was a neighbor that was all friendly with all the kids, and he had walked up at some point and taken a picture of a child, and this is completely off internet. So the reality is AI sucks. It is a huge risk on the internet, but then even on your day to day. And so I don't want people to like live in fear, but I would
Live
say
in
as much as
wisdom.
live in wisdom, walk in wisdom and peace,
Mhm.
use discernment. My discernment, I have to get it from God because I found that my own instincts sometimes fail me. I've gone through that recently, that my own instincts and my own desire to look at others with compassion and kindness has even failed me. And I need to like continuously seek that wisdom from God. And
You
then
were just
also,
saying that some of the thing with church, and when I'm sitting here thinking while you're talking about, this happened. It was a man from church who did this. When I go through and delete people, a lot of times people I've allowed to stay on my account, I'm like, okay, they have very similar beliefs to me. Even if I don't talk to them, every 6 months, like you said, is kind of your cutoff date. I know that they're a lot more like me. And now I'm like, that's not
yeah,
even a safe one. I need to be going, like, if I don't talk to you at all
yeah,
or very little, and it's just like purely acquaintance, you don't need to have access to my children. And I do post them a little bit more on Facebook. I don't
hmm
post them as much on Instagram. And I did post a family photo on Easter. I'm going to go
hmm
back and delete it. And I probably should have deleted it already. There was somebody who commented on it recently, and it was a troll. So I kind of like wrote him off because it was somebody who was just like disagreeing with every single post, probably commented on like 15 posts of mine, didn't like that
hmm
I was pro-life, didn't like that I was conservative. So,
yeah,
I get those and they don't really bother me. But then on the family photo, he posted something like, I'm surprised you posted this picture. You know that there's a guy out there who can find out exactly where you are and where you live. Like, this
hmm
was stupid that you posted this. And I'm like, and all you can see in the photo is like a tiny bit of a pond and one tree. Now,
hmm
maybe there is some sort of software that could find out exactly where that was, but I'm
hmm
pretty confident that there's so little of a background that I don't think that they'd be able to figure it out just from that.
hmm
However, like just somebody commenting that
could
was
be.
like
Well,
overly creepy.
it is, and
And
there's a TikTok where a guy, people send him photos and he finds like it's like literally
exactly where they are.
a corner of the world, and he finds where they are because there are people who do that. They can figure out just by like one little corner of a picture of like if in my backyard, my front yard, whatever, and if they see like a tree line and like a power line and like a corner of a sign, maybe what you're saying, probably not, but like what, but it doesn't take too much. It doesn't take too much, and there's also metadata. Metadata is in our
Mm.
photos. We have to like if you're going to upload things, trying to upload photos that don't have metadata on it. And you can put little
Well, people on
hearts or
Facebook
like
have access to that,
sparkle.
right? Creeps on
Um,
Facebook, creeps who work for
yes,
Facebook or creeps who work for Instagram, like they
hmm
still have access to all of
all
that.
of
And
it.
who's to say that
Yes.
the people who work for them aren't
Mhm.
then going to be going to sell the photos?
Yep.
Okay, now I'm like
And
totally freaking myself out.
there have been. I mean, if we could go down that path all the way, because there's even officers that have been arrested, doctors that have been arrested, Facebook
Right.
employees, Disney employees, like it's everywhere, and that's why like those sleepovers and all those things and trusting people, you really need to like heavenly discernment because um, truly like they do not out themselves. They only out themselves when they get caught accidentally. I have seen this happen in the church. I have seen it happen in every which area, and these people are
Yeah.
very depraved. They have a lot of issues, and they will not show you signs if they can help it. They will really like they can be real hidden, and then they're just sitting there like sitting seeing every photo that you upload and every story that you upload of your kids on your private account. So like a lot of people DM me, they're like, what about my private account? Can people hack like and see my account even though it's private? Because like people will ask me that. I'm like, here's what's more likely is that you still have someone on your list that is actually not safe that you think is safe. That's one. And then another one is that sometimes you have like grandma, right? Grandma's not very savvy to
Mm.
phishing schemes and stuff like that. So she'll click on a link and now somebody else has control of her account and will take all your photos from your private page and save them and create a digital kidnapping account.
Or
Like
she shares them just on her own or whatever,
that
and it
too.
goes
That's a
somewhere
whole
else.
nother thing. That's a whole
Yeah,
nother.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
like control the controllable, and you have to just decide. And then so then when you do have that private page, maybe don't share the
Right.
diaper pics and the dance and the leotards and the bathing suits, and just keep that for you, and like text message it, form. Or they have apps that you could download that are specifically photo sharing, and you can like add family members, and like these are the people that I want to share every moment of my life with. And it's kind of a social media, but not really. It's just like a photo, like, it's kind of like if it were Facebook, but not. And like, only for those specific people. But like I said, like you said, people who work at these companies having access to all these photos, like we really don't know, and we
I
can
never
only
thought about it from
control.
that perspective until literally us talking right now.
And you're right. And that's why I say there is the only no risk you have is not sharing your kids at all. And even then, when you go to the store, you're walking in front of a camera. Even then,
Yeah.
like this guy,
Or
somebody
they could
could
be
walk into your yard and
tweeting.
take a picture of your kid. And
Yeah.
ultimately, we can't live in this stress mode, because that's toxic for you. Like, to be stressed about this to that extent is too much. And we have our nervous system, our kids reflect our nervous system. So we got to stay calm, collected, make the best wise decision that we can, and control what you can control. And so if you do have thousands or millions of followers, yeah, definitely try to share as least details as possible. If you want to, there's like new apps where you could blur the face, or you could sparkle out just the face, and that way everybody could see the beautiful family you have, but they can't recognize your child's face at the store. There's
Yeah.
so many different ways and avenues, and there's moms who do it differently. Like I said, like we talked about Corny, who I love so much, and she decided to go that route because she had a real life experience that really hit home with her, and she said, I'm not doing this anymore. Whereas
Yeah.
she saw my content, but I don't know her timeline, but I know that I had messaged her, and I know that she had followed me at least for some time, and that her own personal life experience is what really got her to make the change. And other moms that I followed many years, like years before I was even a cop, and I remember, and then they started sharing their kids, and then they slowly started like doing side profiles and hearts in front of their faces and blurries, and I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
how cool. Because it takes mom, just like I used to share lifestyle, it takes time because it's like your job, and it takes
Right.
time to change your job, and your followers come for you and your kids, and now they're there only for you, and you have to kind of just like pivot and figure out how to share your life with still centering around motherhood, but not centering around your children. And then there's people like me where I just want to, show my cousins that live 2 hours away, like, look how big the baby's getting. And, oh, like, this is going
Right.
to boost your serotonin levels. Like this video of my baby laughing and we're playing. Like, I want to be able to share that. But I do understand that there is a risk that video or story can not be totally secure, even though I only
Yeah.
have 80 something followers, and I have to just decide, is that a risk I'm willing to take? And so for now, that's the only, like I deleted the Facebook, and that's the only place I share. And then I may not, like I may end up just like stopping altogether and getting off my phone so much. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I have had people stop me in public or recognize me in public, and I don't even, I have, I think 57,000 followers. It's not even like something astronomical, but I've bumped into people at the airport. I've bumped into people, at conventions, but those are like conservative conventions, so I don't even like consider those. But like out in public, whether I'm at a park or whether I'm somewhere else. And then one time, one person stopped me and said, "I thought it was you, but I wasn't sure until I saw your husband and I saw your son."
ugh,
And my
yeah.
son is biracial. My husband is completely tatted, so it's like very distinct things, an easy way to like tell them, to kind of know my family. But yeah, I've been convicted over the last, I'd say I've always had some level of conviction, but I'd say over the last couple of months I've had more and more conviction. My son
Mhm.
plays football. I want to share the stuff that he does, but I'm like, okay, I really don't want to share where he goes to school, and so I'll
Mhm.
try to blur something out if I do, and maybe it's from a distance, like
Yeah.
a reel from a video of it from a distance. He's got a helmet on, so you can't see his face anyway.
Mhm.
But there's identifiers if you
Yeah,
have like the name
uniforms.
of the team on there. So, and I live in a smaller town, Alabama. If somebody really paid attention to like the places I was going that I'm posting on stories, they could, narrow
Yeah.
it down. Like people
Oh,
can
it's
figure it
easy.
out if they really want to. So my
Mhm.
conviction has gotten stronger and stronger, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, because I have seen people talking about sharenting and oversharenting.
Yeah, Mom Uncharted does a really good job. She
Yeah.
goes in on it. And she seems to be very balanced. Like she doesn't like fully attack the character of these people, which I like because I have a very balanced view and I understand. Like I used to be a person that consumed a lot of mom influencer and YouTuber content. Like, it's fun to see other people's lives and how they compare to yours and how like parenting can be tough. But the risk isn't worth the benefit. And so that's why, Mom Uncharted, her name is Sarah, she came out and she's just like going in on it. But a lot of the content that she's attacking is on TikTok, where, like you said, people are sharing the kids licking an ice cream cone, eating a pickle, eating a hot dog. And there's a girl who shares her daughter like getting baths and she's wearing like a bathing suit and she's washing her hair. And I'm like, and she's getting millions and billions of views on TikTok. These are all creeps watching your video throughout the entire world because TikTok is very
At that point,
international.
you've got the creeps commenting.
Yeah,
Like
and
at that
and
point, I
she knows.
definitely fault the parent. Like that is
Yeah,
so
she
not
knows.
okay.
They know, but then they're young. Their frontal
No, they're
cortex
still
is
young.
not fully developed, and so they're making these decisions. Now their kids are going to have to deal with this as they grow, and there's a lot of popular parents that these that people are calling out, but it's like it's just sad. Like there just should be some regulation out there, and they're making money off of this, and like they're able to provide for that child. Maybe they're single moms and they're able to provide for that child because of the content they're sharing. And so they can't bring themselves to
Yeah,
fully take it down, but they probably do feel some level of conviction because who wants to hear or see a comment of a creep talking about your 3-year-old like that?
totally,
Vomiting, like
totally
vomit. So,
unacceptable.
there's a lot. There's a lot of, you know, it's called generation overshared or something like that. And there's no rules to it. Like I have friends who are influencers and I don't shame them at all. And I understand a lot of their content is funny or inspirational or, like it can inspire parents to take certain avenues of life to help others. And like, I totally understand. And so it's just hard, and people don't want to live in a state of fear and they don't want to let like the sentiment that I've heard is I don't want to let pedophiles and predators tell me how to live my life. Like if you're gonna sexualize a child, then that's on you, not on me. I'm not gonna let you control me in my life, my income, my the joy and passion that I get from sharing my life as a mom. I'm not gonna let them control me. But ultimately, to me, it's like, and my personal choices, it's like, but I don't want my child to get kidnapped. I don't want my child to get digitally kidnapped, meaning like the photos and have all these accounts. They're going to grow up and like, they could find this stuff. They could have to deal with this stuff because
Hmm.
now they're doing background checks that are more in depth. And like, hey, like, did you know that there's like 3 accounts of you online and none of them are really like your mom or none of them are really you? And then there's stuff in the dark web. And oops, you had like a kidnap or a stalker when you were 10 and like these are just like the risks and the benefits and all those
Yeah,
things and there's some we can control and some we can't control, so there's
yeah.
really a balance that has to be had or made.
I've had people steal my photos and share them on other accounts, and I've had to go report them and say this isn't me, and it's totally creepy that anybody would do that. I think a lot of them are probably those weird like uh,
Scammers, yeah.
schemes of people trying to get money and whatnot. And I do fundraisers on my page for moms in unplanned pregnancy sometimes. So I could see somebody be like, oh, if I steal her account, I could say I'm doing something like this. And,
Yeah, people will
maybe
give.
from that perspective. But I'm always like, this is my only account. This is the only thing you're going to see me post on. The only thing you'll see me raise money on. But they steal pictures and it's bizarre and creepy. Yami, thank you so much for joining us. I want to say if you could give one piece of advice to the moms and dads out there who are listening or the future moms and dads when it comes to having to fight that stigma that people can say, you're a helicopter parent, let your kids do something, let them live, let them just, be kids, stop being overprotective, and they just have that gut feeling deep down like, no, this is right. I need to protect my kids in this way. I don't care if you think I'm a helicopter parent. How would you encourage them to speak out and stand up for their kids and stand up for their family and make sure that they're protecting them in that way?
I would just stay true to that gut feeling. Like it was given to us by our creator. Like you can call it the Holy Spirit intuition. You can call it whatever you want, your gut. Just follow your gut. Don't silence it. Don't say, no, you're overstressed, you're fearful, you're scared, you're fear mongered. Like just really, your child, right? And and get to know them, like really their behaviors, and because they can also sense things. And so like see how they feel around these people. See if there's maybe an overstepping boundary around certain people. Maybe there's a fear boundary, like a fear, like, you know, you feel like, oh, there's something kind of going on here where they don't really like that person, but they say they'll go with them, or they say everything's okay. And just like really get on a level of communication with your children and getting to know your children as they age, to where you have that trust, and ignore everybody else. Just ignore them, because people are people pleasers. We have a lot of people pleasers out there. I know I have been one. And you're not gonna make everybody happy. And I understand the loneliness in motherhood and parenthood, where you finally get mom friends or dad friends or whatever, and then they don't agree with your helicopterness, and now you're like, oh well, to please these people and to keep these people in my life, I'm gonna have to chill out, or I'm going to stay strong. And I promise you, if you stay strong, you're going to see the benefit of it. But there's a difference of protection and, what's the word? Protection and control, right? So like, it's not about controlling our kids' every move, every thought, and every experience, but it is about protecting them and providing them a safe harbor to learn and navigate. And there's a scripture that says, train up your children in the way that they should go, and when they grow old, they will not depart from it. So if we train them up, yes, eventually we got to give them their wings and let them fly, and God willing, they make the right choices. But until they get to that adulthood stage, we're their protectors, we're their providers. We were given them their gifts, and we are to take care of those gifts. And if you do it lovingly and without your nervous system in a state of fear, then you're doing great. Now, if you are fear-based, then you do need to do some work on yourself, on your heart, because you may have trauma, you may have things that you've gone through, and you don't want to pass that on to your children either. So there is a fine balance. And so if you're looking in the mirror and you're really honest with yourself and with your spouse, and you're saying, man, this is like an unhealthy sense of control that I'm having, control issues, and then maybe that's something to look into deeper and find a better balance. Because there is an overstepping and an over control mode that's fear-based. But then there's also people who are way too lax because they don't want to get into that mode, and then they go too far the other direction. So there's definitely a middle ground that you can be at, and you can be at confidently, and you know your family best.
Absolutely.
And it also does reflect what you've been through. So you don't, like, for example, people will say, just let your kids sleep over. I love them. I'm safe. I'll take care of them. Go have a date night. If your gut says no, 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 then don't do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't be afraid on trying to people please and not offend. Just, you know, you don't want to say no and then regret it later. Like, you know, like I always say, like, I will be happy that I didn't do the sleepover than if I did do it and something happened, you know, like, well, at least I tried to make my kid happy. Like, no, everybody that has gone through something says that I wish I would have never done it. So that's what I would say.
Don't parent in fear, parent in wisdom. Use your discernment.
Wisdom.
We have discernment for a reason.
Exactly.
Yami, thank you so much. Where can everybody find you, follow up in your content? And if you guys, if you're listening, also go listen to the Protect Young Eyes episode with Chris McKenna that we referenced earlier. Great information, great resource for parents. But where can we find you online?
I am at Yami Pence, YAMIPENCE on Instagram. I plan to have more resources in the future as I navigate motherhood and running this educational space, but there's a lot of free content on there. It might take time, break it up into bits and pieces that you could chew, that isn't overstimulating or over stressful, because it's a lot, you know, and take it, chew it bit by bit, and then same with your kids, bit by bit.
Right. Yami, thank you so much for joining the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.